pages here, but I think maybe I'll set this aside for today and just speak off the cuff. So as Karen says, I don't do this kind of thing in my day job because I'm a scientist, and so normally I'm talking in front of a PowerPoint display with equations or chalk in my hand. I don't even have my laser pointer today. Normally I get my laser pointer around and I gesture to something behind me, but even that's out of battery, so I'm on my own entirely. So I am from Massachusetts in the sense that I was born here in Springfield, Massachusetts, but I grew up in Enfield, Connecticut. I went to Wesleyan University in Connecticut, and I got a PhD in physics at the University of Maryland. As you may have noticed from the sort of the Asian quality of the number of people around the room, or the half-Asian quality of the number of people around the room, I've spent some time in places other than the United States. I was in Japan for about 12 years after I got my PhD. I met a beautiful woman who was crazy enough to become my wife, and so we now have 4 kids. We lived in Holliston for 5 years. I came back from Japan because Harvard called and offered me a job to head what's called the National Nanotechnology Infrastructure Network Computation Project, which is a mouthful, and I can guarantee you there are not very many nanoscience computationalists running anywhere in Massachusetts for any kind of race. So I try sometimes to tell people that, you know, maybe being a scientist has some value as far as being the representative for Massachusetts, because Massachusetts, after all, is a very high-tech state. We're in a sort of regime in time when, you know, some scientific knowledge is very useful because we've got things like global warming, which is a frustrating subject for skeptics like me. We've got things like energy, where some kind of scientific knowledge is useful. But more than anything, you know, I don't think being a scientist makes a difference. It's just, you know, I have some ideas, and if they appeal to you, scientist or no, then that's good. So today is a not so spectacularly happy day for a lot of people in this room. And if I didn't say something about it, I think I would be kind of remiss. I mean, I don't know, and we don't have the TV on now, what the vote is going to be on the healthcare situation. It's certainly gotten a lot of people really up in arms. It certainly got me up in arms. But I'm not terribly optimistic, and we may wake up with a different day tomorrow. So here's something that I've been saying to people about, you know, the kind of person I am and what formed my opinions, because you don't get a lot of conservatives at Harvard University. So, in fact, we get 2 conservatives from Harvard University here. So we have actually, I think that's 2/3 of the university, isn't it? Or that may be, no, actually we know another one. We know another one. So I tell people, I said, you know, in my lifetime, there have been 2, I'd say, defining historical events. And they both involved things falling down. The first one is the fall of the Berlin Wall, which more or less started in 1989. The second one, of course, the fall of the Twin Towers in New York City in 2001. And Barack Obama doesn't understand either of those events. I think in particular the healthcare issue is one clear example of the fact that he doesn't understand what the fall of the Berlin Wall was all about, how that meant a difference between capitalism and socialism, and which system worked better. I actually have a list. I do want to have a list of the medical history of the 20th century here. I do want to read some of those things because I think this is quite instructive. You know, we all knew, I think, that this Obamacare proposal never was meant as a solution to the problems that we have in medicine in America. You know, if you want lower costs, you do things like you have a cross-state border competition, or you have healthcare accounts. There are ways to address, you know, the spiraling costs. If you want to make sure everybody's got health care, well, you know, you can expand Medicaid, or you can have clinics. There are ways to address that. But the bill that's going to pass today, or that looks like it's going to pass today, isn't dedicated to solving those problems. It's dedicated to satisfying an ideology or a point of view that was previous to any of those problems. And that point of view, as far as I'm concerned, is based on two principles. Principle number one is that the government knows what's good for you better than you know what's good for you. You'll always hear them talking about experts, this, experts, that. For me, when I hear a liberal talk about experts, I reach for my wallet. And then I say, an expert is somebody who knows how to spend my money, how to spend your money better than you know how to spend your money. So that's one thing. Another thing is, and you'll hear this over and over again, is they want to take the profit motive out of healthcare. That's a really driving force. And I saw somebody on Jim Lehrer's show once on PBS talking just about that. Says, well, they were from Harvard, I'm sorry to say. And they were saying, there's this woman from the sociology department saying, well, we really have to get the profit motive out of healthcare. And I hear this all the time from my friends. I had lunch with a friend a short time ago, and she was lamenting the fact that she was taking her child to a daycare center. It was a very reputable daycare center, but it was one that wasn't communal or wasn't based on a co-op, but it was one that was run for profit. And she sort of saw that as jeopardizing her child by taking her someplace where people are trying to make money. And this is the kind of thinking that actually goes on. So Obama talks a lot, and you've heard it all on television, about the fact that they've been trying to pass health care for 100 years in the United States. Every 15 years or so something comes up. That's true. Teddy Roosevelt in like 1907 or something, the Bull Moose Party had some proposal for universal health care. And then there was another bill in 1915, and FDR did it a couple times. The thing is, Americans rejected it every single time. So the question is, what's happened to medicine in the United States since Teddy Roosevelt? So that's what I had a list of something. So let me give you a few ideas. In 1907, we had the first successful human blood transfusion by a guy who was at that time German. He became American shortly thereafter. 1913, we had the development of the electrocardiograph by Dr. Paul Dudley. 1922, insulin was first introduced to treat diabetes. 1922, vitamin A and vitamin B were first synthesized. 1932, there was a vaccine for pertussis. 1923, vaccine for diphtheria. 1935, John Gibbon invented the heart-lung machine. He used it on a cat, and later used it on human beings, and that's what all open heart surgery is based on, is the heart-lung machine. 1937 was the first blood bank at Cook Community Hospital in Chicago, because the cooling and the addition of sodium citrate was useful to preserve blood for a long time. 1942, American physiologist Albert Hyman invented the artificial pacemaker. 1952, Waxman was given the Nobel Prize for streptomycin. 1954, there was the first human kidney transplant in the United States. 1950, or in the world. 1950, Pfizer introduced terramycin. 1953 was heart surgery using the heart-lung machine. 53 was also Jonas Salk invented the polio vaccine. 62, Sabin invented the oral polio vaccine. So we had 2 polio vaccines. 64, measles. 67, mumps. 1970, rubella. 1967, the first coronary bypass operation in Cleveland. 1974, the first vaccine for chickenpox. 77, pneumonia. 1978, meningitis. 81, hepatitis. 1980, the World Health Organization announces that smallpox is eradicated. We're up to 1981. Nothing that I mentioned there was developed in the Soviet Union. It was all developed in the West, and a lot of it was developed in the United States. And that is, I think, as good a testimony to the importance of the ugly profit motive in our medical system, and it's as good a testimony to why I think that we have to fight back and push back against what's happening in Washington today. And that's as good a reason as any why I'm running. Now I could say a couple things about Obama not understanding the fall of the Twin Towers, but I won't. I'm not going to belabor it right now. I mean, I think most of you know that the Obama administration belabors and agonizes over how we can defend ourselves and what's right to defend ourselves. And I, for one, think that that's a show of a guilty conscience. And I don't think that Americans generally have a guilty conscience about America. I think generally Americans are proud of America, and I am too. Anyway, so let me just finish with that and say thank you very much for listening. And I hope, and I took a lot of your time, and I certainly appreciate your listening. So enjoy and eat food and drink and have a good time. Thanks. Any questions? You can all come up to me and ask questions.
We try to get the healthcare.